Everyone. Um, just as a heads up before we get into anything, I'll do the notes from tonight and send them around as minutes. Because we aren't going to have another meeting, I think, before our terms end. I think that one we're just going to have to approve administratively, but we can handle that one over email. But I'll do them for tonight. Unless anyone has a strong objection and would like to take over those responsibilities.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Okay. First up on the agenda, we have resident comments. As always, if you would like to provide resident comment, raise your hand either virtually or use the Zoom function, or just come on camera and wave at us, and we will have resident comments. Okay. First up, Marty.
Hey, thank you. I think you already know about these comments because I sent them to you by email, but I have basically 4 points. First is the question about where were the 3 missing ballots that were omitted from the initial vote counting, and what was Electech's explanation for how they got misplaced. So that's one question. Second question, again, I previously asked this by email. Do we need to have some additional procedures in place to make sure that we don't have missing, misplaced, or incorrectly recorded ballots in the future? I mean, what happened with Eclectic? And do we need to have a response in terms of our instructions to the vendor next year? So that's a procedural question. And the third question was one I asked, well, several times, most recently on May 31st, about what's the status of the 2023 voter roll verification and procedures document. I requested a copy of the latest draft. Allison, at the last meeting, you said you were going to review it and under advisement, look at maybe make some additional changes in it. Is there a final version of it? If so, please send a copy and post it on the listserv. I mean, on the website. And if not, what's the status? In any case, I'd like a copy of whatever the most recent version is. Thank you for that. And number 4 is really just, I'd love to hear what you did, because I think I said in my email, I'm all for including every valid voter on the annual voter roll. And, I'm a real stickler about verifying voter rolls. What procedures did you use this year to come up with 747 qualified voters? Last year, there were 625. I went back and looked, and I actually ran a side-by-side comparison of the 22 voter roll and the 23 voter roll. And, it's very clear that 2, sometimes 3 people got added to a whole lot of addresses. And who were those people is one question. There are a couple places, one in particular, where 2 people with the same name seem to be listed at address. Like there was a Tim and a Timothy, somebody. And were those 2 people, or was that one person who got 2 ballots? So anyway, I would really like you to discuss tonight what procedures you use, because that's an incredible increase from 625 to 747. Terrific. If they're all valid voters, that's just great. Thank you for doing it. But what did you do? What was the procedure? Those are my 4 points. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Okay, I will summarize these fairly quickly. 1, where were the ballots? They were found by Electech. 2 of them were the ballots that we had identified and called for addressing specifically during the meeting that we then accepted. After they were accepted, they weren't immediately added to that stack, but they were added through the second time. The third of those ballots that you were asking about was a ballot that was received by Electech and was with the other ones, but had not been scanned into the computer. Electech found it.
Where
Marty,
were they? Where did they find
Can I finish talking before you jump in?
Okay, go ahead.
It was found by Electech. It was with the other ones. Electech, in my opinion, and I've expressed this to the committee members, we do not need additional procedures. The procedures worked exactly as they were intended to. Electech manages this by doing, this is why we do multi-stage process, where we check in throughout the process, where we have the numbers that we are counting, and where, in this case, there was an issue. We were wondering, why did those numbers change? Electech, we were able to spot that at the time and get it addressed. So the process worked exactly as it was supposed to. That's why we've set it up this way. So that's why those were caught then. And that is why we were able to address it before we announced the official final vote count. That is something that was part of our conversations with Electech to make sure that this gets caught. I don't think we need new procedures on top of the procedures that are already working. That introduces more opportunities for potential issues. It introduces more potential confusion throughout the process. I think the process as it was designed for this year worked exactly the way that we intended for it to do. So that was we were able to catch them throughout this process. So I think that's questions 1 and 2. Question 3 relating to the voter roll. We made up to the voter roll, but that is one internal committee working product. That's not something that's was getting posted. That is not something that's getting shared broadly. Related to the process that was used in developing the voter roll this year, I would refer you to our last meeting where that was discussed at length, both by the committee and by village manager, walking through the exact steps that were taken and what sources were being pulled from, along with recommendations that were discussed during that meeting, recommendations from Michael for suggestions related to things that he is going to be doing over the next year to help make this process easier for whoever is on the committee next year, handling the voter roll development, validation and verification process. So I would refer you to our last committee meeting and the recording therein, because that is discussed at length during that meeting.
Okay, thank you. May I respond?
Sure.
Okay. It's great that you don't think we need any more procedures. I'm very glad to hear that. I still want to know, where were the 3 missing ballots? What happened on Eclectic side? The 3 were not where they were supposed to have been. Did you discuss that with Eclectic?
Yes, that was discussed with Electech. That was part of the conversation we had with them, and I just described where they were, Marty. So
I think we
were they on the
sufficiently
floor,
handled
were
this.
they on a table?
The purpose of this is for residents' comments. Thank you for
Yeah.
your comments. I think we should move on.
yeah, Marty, do you have anything else?
Just that it would be interesting to have you actually explain who the additional residents were. Were they mostly like the 18-year-olds, teenagers who had not been listed previously? This is my fourth
Again-
question about 747. I mean, I went back and read what you said. I've
Again, I
already
would
done that.
refer you, Marty, I would refer you to our last committee meeting.
I
where
read it.
those
I don't have
were.
an answer.
Okay,
didn't
well,
make
let's
sense.
not
Privacy
watch the
issues.
numbers over.
Marty, there are privacy issues that are
The
not
voter
going to
roll is a
allow us
public
to
document.
disclose.
No, the voter
But
roll is
you're
a
asking-
public
Marty,
document.
Marty,
Sorry.
you're
Marty,
asking-
Marty, hey,
You're
Marty,
asking for the names of the missing ballots, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I'm asking for a more of a discussion of how we added at 122 voters this year. I'm glad we did. That sounds like you did things right. This is not a criticism. This is a question, because that's really, a big change. And I just want to know from you, were most of them, for example, teenagers being added? If so, great, because I think college students should be able to vote. That's what we've always had in Martin's Additions. Did some of the au pairs, for example, get registered to vote this year? And Arthur Alexander brought that up at the last meeting. And did you guys follow up on that? I mean, there's nothing in the record that says what you actually did. So I'm curious, and I would like to be able to praise you for doing it.
Well, Marty, thank you for your desire to praise us. But I believe we sufficiently answered the question. Are there any other comments from residents?
okay. Oh, Naomi?
Naomi's gonna yell.
You're on mute.
Do we have a process for coupling nearly identical names? So for example, Tim at the same address as Timothy. Is that a way that we can identify the possibility that there is a duplicate ballot in the process? Do we have a process for doing that? And is there a way, there is a way of doing this programmatically? So do we want to make sure that we're not processing or sending out duplicate ballots by checking through a deduplicating process? Do we have a process for that?
Yes, there is a process both on the front end and on the back end. I can say this, and I will try and do this very quickly. On the front end, that is part of the development of the voter roll, in which all the committee members do that review. On the back end, it is also something where one of the things that comes back from Electech is a list of ballot control numbers that are assigned to these names were the ballots that arrived. That is what we use. That is allows people to check to make sure that their ballots arrived and were counted. So that would be the other check in which it is going to show that ballots were, nobody was voting multiple ballots on one thing. So yes, there are processes both at the beginning and at the end.
Okay, I'm still concerned about the huge increase in the voter ballot.
Well, I think that was a byproduct of the processes that were discussed at the last meeting, in which we described that they were pulling from different and new sources. We put out calls to residents for people to be added. So if you have specific concerns, issues, I would recommend you can follow up with us on those. But broadly, I can say we discussed those processes at length. That is something that all of the committee members signed on to, all the committee members participated in. So I do not share those concerns. I'm actually very happy that we're able to catch a broader
Okay.
net and make sure
So
we're
you're
empowering
saying we
people.
were more thorough this year?
Yes.
Okay,
Is there something else I can help with?
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other resident comments? Okay, seeing none. Next up on our agenda is, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. Approval of our minutes from the previous meeting. Those were sent out to committee members. They are attached as a member of the packet. Any committee members have concerns, questions, issues, edits, additions, anything?
No, and I motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Eric, anything you want to talk about before we vote?
No, I was absent for that meetings, but
Okay,
so
Allison seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
Excellent. Those are adopted. Michael, we'll get those posted. Okay. Next up, review of election activities. This is on the agenda just as an opportunity where we wanted to make sure that committee members, you had an opportunity to raise anything from the election cycle that we have just gone through, any of the activities, see if there was anything that anyone wanted to discuss, flag for next year, talk through kind of any recommendations for anyone for next year.
George, Eric, I had one observation that I thought the sidewalk celebration and the election worked out pretty well together. And I'm curious if other people share that perspective.
I was going to comment the same thing, so I fully support doing that again.
And I concur with that.
Yeah, especially with getting more than 100 people dropping off their ballots this year, I think was a really good sign of how, even in a hybrid or mail-in approach, I think that's something that definitely worked. I would add my little recommendation if we had at least one or two people ask us for replacement or new ballots at the table, where if that is something that next year's committee can make possible, I think that would make it even more appealing for people if they could be celebrating and potentially get a replacement ballot. But that is an issue for next year. But I very much foot stomp. I think that was an excellent event, and I've said this in many meetings before, but thank you to everyone for putting that one on, because that was a big success.
And also, we did have a few people drive up, so having somebody actually facing the other way to help get those ballots that way, having a box that they can drive up and drop in might be helpful too.
Yeah, especially with the celebration going on, I think it limits parking down there.
Yep.
So making it as easy as possible for people to drop stuff off is good. Anything else talking through this year's?
I just think that the committee next year, I'm sure will be brought up by the residents with the candidate forum. I think we had sufficient evidence that probably having open questions would not be a very good way to run it, that having people pre-submit and then submitting to the email box was effective, and it certainly used the time. So I think that needs to be carefully considered next year.
Yeah, I'd very much agree. I think actually how we did it this year, again, I think worked really well, where pre-submitted questions were the primary driver, because that's one that kind of allows for the right balance, but then allowing the submission through the chat function rather than opening live mic stuff. I think, yeah, like you said, Allison, I think we had some pretty good evidence this year of some of the pitfalls that could have presented had the mics been just open and live. So I think that is a good balance that allows people to submit follow-ups and, kind of ask for clarifications or more details during the meeting without necessarily opening ourselves up to some of those risks. Anything else on this year? Okay. Next up was committee administrative closeout. So Eric had shot me a quick email just asking what exactly this meant. This is just, I wanted to kind of give us a chance, and Michael, I'm also going to put you on the spot for just making sure we're going to run down kind of the checklist of everything we have left to do before end of the year. I will do the minutes from tonight's meeting and email those around so that way we can get those approved so we can get those online. And then the only other one I can think of is just make sure everyone, I think, Michael, I think it's a conversation with you around organizing the committee inbox, but I think just everyone making sure files and stuff are loaded into the committee inbox for records retention. And then Michael will, I'm sure, change the password, but ask all of us to make sure that our access to the committee inbox is offline. Michael, anything else that you can think of that we need?
Can I raise a quick question or a suggestion? I've done this, I've suggested this before. If you have any lessons learned, things that went well, things that were mistakes, things that didn't turn out as planned or whatever, if we could add that to your wrap up, it would be useful for who's ever on the committee next year.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Arthur. And I would just, Arthur popping up reminded me, the committee guidelines that Arthur sent out do have some useful stuff for kind of closing out your personal stuff. So take a quick look at those. But any other admin closeout stuff from anyone that you can think of?
George, I was going to add that there's a council meeting tomorrow night. So your committee's report, I know you're planning on coming and attending that and reporting there as well. So that's one additional item. And then as far as recommendations for next year, I think the one that I noted in the beginning was the creation of the election plan and having to redo that every year line by line is pretty time consuming and controversial. So I think a recommendation that would be helpful coming from me, but also from the committee, would just be saying, let's adopt a once and for all, a final election plan where the only blanks are the dates, and those just get filled in with the parameters around what those dates can be. And the other recommendation out of that was maybe to allow for more curing time of ballots, maybe an opportunity to get on, review all of the ballots with the election service provider, and then 2 days later come back and do the final count or something. That way you allow for some time for ballot curing if any of those issues arise. And other than that, I think we're good to go.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and I'm sure, yeah, you and I will talk just to make sure, yeah, getting the last bits of admin stuff. I did want to follow up with you on the admin side. Did the box from Electech with all the election materials show up?
No, I am actually being hand delivered that by Nikki at Electech, I think in a week. So
okay.
that saved us a little bit of shipping to ship that box. She's actually just going to deliver it to me.
Okay.
And she's in this area. Yep.
Excellent. So for everyone, that's just the records retention, Records Retention Act, Michael, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we retain all ballots according to our schedule for 6 months, and then we shred those. And that's just if there's any, legal disputes or anything like that, we have those. And we save the results of the election forever, of course.
Okay. Cool. Any other admin stuff for anyone? No? Okay. My last closeout one, I just want to say is a just absolutely massive thank you, Ben, Allison, Eric. Thank you guys so much for volunteering to do this year. I know it was not always easy. I know it was not always the ideal circumstances for jumping in midway through the year under the circumstances that we had, but I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys have been just absolutely a delight to work with this year. So thank you so much to all of you guys.
I will add another thank you from the council. So that's 4.
And I would like to say, George, AKA Catherine, I truly appreciate your hard work, your dedication, your leadership on this committee. I personally have witnessed a bunch of elections as being a 10-year resident, and I don't think anyone has done it better than you. I truly commend you for your great job. And I just want to say thank you. And yeah, I think, I appreciate your thick skin too. I mean, you've been attacked and you just handle it with such a great grace and smile. And somehow I'm the one you're calming down. So great job, man. I really appreciate
Hear,
working with you.
Here, here. Yeah, I would echo that. Your competence, diplomacy, patience under fire has been a role model that I could never achieve.
I
One of us would want to be you.
I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to.
As they say in Top Gun, I'll fly with you anytime.
I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys around the village. I think as things have been opening up, I ran into Ben at the cafe. It's been great getting to see all of you guys out and about and not just in the little Zoom boxes on election meetings. So
And
thank you,
Eric,
guys.
I truly appreciate the Top Gun reference as a Navy man. That is amazing. And I just want to finish up by saying, go Navy, beat Army.
Wow.
So with that finished, I think we move to resident comments. Again, if you have resident comments, please just raise your hand. Katie, I see your hand is up.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm sorry for my tardiness. I was on a conflicting PTA Zoom call, voting on the school's budget. So I just wanted to express my thanks as both a council member and a former candidate and re-elected candidate. You all did a thorough job. You're amazing volunteers. I like to stress volunteer because I know you all lead very busy lives and you did this as part of your free time. So thank you, George, Allison, Ben, and Eric, in case you're not at the meeting tomorrow night, the council meeting. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out that once elected, she shows up late.
I did have an excuse, but yeah.
Ben's archiving that as a question for the candidate forum in 2 years. Marty?
Yes, thank you. And again, my thanks and commendations on a job that was thoroughly done. And only remaining question is, how do I get a copy of the voter verification document that you all were working on? Is the most recent version the one that was discussed at the last meeting? What's the current version of that, and where would I be able to find that?
So that's an internal working document for the committee. So that is not something that we are publishing online or anything like that. That's part of the committee's working process. The election plan is something that obviously is public. The election plan establishes there's a couple of other things that do need to be published online, like the vote counting procedures or something that gets published because that gets voted on by the council, but this is not something that is. If you want a current copy of the voter roll, that is obviously a public document. You can request that from the village office.
I have the voter roll. I'm asking for the voter verification document that was approved by the council in 2022. And then there were some draft amendments to it that Allison worked on your committee this year. What I want is the draft version, the most recent version. That's what I'm asking for. That's a public document.
It's not actually. The 2022, the council voted on the voter roll procedures, but that was just for last year's voter roll process. This year's voter roll process, again, that's a committee working document. That's not something that we are publishing online or sharing. So that's
Why isn't
I-
that available as a public document? The fact
because
that you
it's
haven't voted
internal
on it
committee,
yet?
because it's internal committee working product.
Okay, when does it become something that you actually would adopt as a committee? Next year?
We don't need to adopt it as a committee. Frankly, next year's committee will follow whatever procedures they deem appropriate pursuant to the 2023, 2024 election plan. So it's not something that is a permanent document that carries over year to year.
That's very interesting to me because I was under the opposite impression that it was part of our general election procedures from here on out, from 22 on.
Nope.
That's very interesting because again, I think the procedures you followed this year obviously were very thorough. They're probably model procedures. We ought to have them in writing to make sure next year's committee, which may not have your expertise, does as good a thorough job as you all did. That seems to me a public policy document, a procedures document that needs to be, official.
It's available to the committee. It's a
To the
committee
community?
working doc,
the committee.
committee.
To the
It is a
but not
committee
publicly.
working document and
How
it's
do we move
available
it
to
from being a
committee.
working document to a public policy document like it was in 22?
I would
That's
take
an
that
issue
up with
you
the
can take up-
committee.
You can take that up with the committee, you can take that up with the council. If that is something they would like to see voted on and approved by the council, then that is something the council can add to next year's election plan.
Well, at least I understand your take on it, George, although I don't agree, obviously. I think it's a public document. Thank you.
Any other resident comments? Okay. Any motions from committee members?
I would love to motion to adjourn.
And
Second.
motions to adjourn. Eric seconds. All in favor? Aye.
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 Excellent. Okay, it is 8 o'clock exactly. The committee is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thanks.